Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm Kathy, host for today, and we have a gentleman here to discuss EFT tapping. His name is Leo. It's Emotional Freedom Tapping that it stands for?
Emotional Freedom Technique.
Technique, excuse me.
That's
This is why we have him here though,
That's
right?
okay.
So how did you learn about EFT and how did you get started with it?
So I was familiar with Emotional Freedom Technique I had heard about it, I believe, in going through like my own healing journey with dealing with like anxiety and different traumas and trying to just kind of manage like stress and anxiety in life. I've had a lot of life stress in our lives. We, adopted a teenager back in 2017, my wife and I did, and we've had a lot of just, emotional hurdles and stuff through life. And I was at a point where, I was dealing with different types of stress and different types of anxiety, but I had some anger going on that I was dealing with that just kept coming up, and I couldn't seem to kind of like manage it. Like it would like bubble up, like something would trigger it. Like my daughter might say something and it might trigger just like me to kind of just, I don't know, just lose my temper, or I would get upset about maybe things that weren't necessarily necessary being upset about.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't like rational, my reaction to something that, I made it a bigger deal than it really was because I was being triggered by like previous stuff that was triggering the anger. So I learned about EFT tapping from a friend of mine who I had taken I taught a class, and this person actually, I forgot the story, but this person was a student of mine, a Reiki student.
Okay.
And so they were a hypnotherapist. They also practiced EFT tapping. And so they had taken my Reiki level 1 and the Reiki level 2 class. And so I knew they did the EFT tapping. And I was talking to another mutual friend of hers and mine, and I was just talking about like some stressful situations, and she's like, "Oh, have you talked to Deb about EFT tapping yet?" And I said, "Oh, I totally forgot she does that." So I reached out to Deb and I said, "I want to schedule a session."
Yeah.
I said, and I was at a point where it was kind of like affecting us as a family, and we were kind of getting in arguments and stuff because of just different things.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, you really got to get this anger thing under control. So I was like, okay, I've tried other things, tried Reiki, tried breathing techniques, I've tried meditation, and EFT was popping up as a reminder. It's like, hey, this is over here. Why don't you give this a try? And so I did. I went and I had a session, and I'd never had a session before. And so the person that took me through the session, they were very good about, kind of talking about what to expect and explain the different tapping points that generally we use. And she took me through sort of this guided experience that she brought up maybe memories, or had me tap into memories that were connected to the emotions that I was looking to release with the tapping. And so as I kind of walked through those, she took me through like some affirmation statements. So like we would talk about like, I'm really angry about this because, and with EFT tapping, you go a little bit deeper in the layers each time you do like an affirmation statement. And so the whole idea with tapping is to kind of sort of acknowledge what you're feeling, and acknowledging that it's okay to feel that way also. So you kind of give your permission to feel that it's okay to feel what you're feeling. And then what you do is, as you're going through like these memories or circumstances where, kind of planted these seeds for these triggers with these emotions, we sort of uncover different connections. So like we initially I went into the session talking about like anger towards my daughter about a few things. And it led to, we talked about that anger, but then it connected to like, okay, what else am I angry about? And it got into like not just situations with her, but it got into situations like earlier in my life, like in childhood with my parents, or even just other relationships where anger occurred. And so the whole idea, what was so profound is when we kind of uncovered all these different situations and memories where anger occurred. Now with the EFT tapping, it was kind of lighting all these up so I could see them all at once. And so that's the whole idea with the EFT tapping, is it kind of uncovers and illuminates everything. And then what you can do now that you see it, what's going on, now you can actually take the power away from it and release the hold it has over you. And so it may not necessarily be immediate, but there's a progression to it. And so we went through the session with me, and we got to the bottom of some things and got to the root of like some deeper reasons why, let's say, like the intensity of my anger was coming out at a certain level. Because like, you know, one person might be angry about something and they may really react on a high level. The same situation with someone else, they may not react as on a high level. But when you compound the effects of like anger over time, it increases the intensity of the reaction that eventually when it comes out, it's almost irrational and it's not in proportion to what triggered it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so we went through the session, we got to the root of some deeper things that I was angry about that weren't even necessarily connected to my daughter, but were fueling the anger trigger that was connected to my daughter, if that makes sense, if you're following me. So we finished the session, we wrapped up, and on my drive home, it was really interesting because I was having all these like sporadic connections now happening in my head while I was driving home, because I was almost going through memory lane on my drive home of different things, like with different emotions. And so like when I first was driving home, because we had done the session connected to anger, I was tapping into not only things that came up in the session, but then there was new things that I hadn't thought about that didn't come up in the session that now were coming up while I was driving home thinking about it, and was actually making connections and finding roots where they were planted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like the
and then, you know, it went beyond anger, then it went to some other emotions, and I don't even remember what they were, but all I remember, it was just kind of like I was having these epiphanies, like one after one, about like, oh wow, this is why it affected me so much, and this is why I reacted this way, and I could never put my finger on why this bothered me so much. But now, after doing this EFT tapping session, and on my drive home, I'm like, oh, that's why.
So it kind of like from the beginning of the root of the anger issue, though, it was like festering all these years.
Yeah.
So it was like just got bigger by the time.
It's like a spider web.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a web of anger, or you may have a web of sadness, or you may have a web of depression, whatever it is, like, and there's all kinds of interconnections. But what's really cool about the EFT tapping is it helps you kind of highlight and illuminate the things that might be in your subconscious that are not in your conscious mind. So what the EFT does is it's a way of quickly processing things with the affirmation statements, and it, without thinking about it, because you're responding to the affirmation statement so quickly, it just comes out, it just flows. So you don't have time to think about what do I want to say. It's not about what I want to say. It's just like, oh, what comes out.
Yeah.
And so it's like raw, it's organic, and it's real, and it gets to like the root of things. And I don't know if that's answering your question.
It does, yeah. So how long ago was this, though, when
the tapping session?
Yeah.
I would say the tapping session was probably maybe 3 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe 3 plus, something like that, 3
Yeah.
or 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do the EFT tapping now on a regular basis still?
So yeah, I practice it on myself, but I now, because I had such a profound experience with it, it's like when you learn something new, like when you learn Reiki, you want to kind of like share it with people because you're excited about it.
Yeah.
And so with the EFT tapping, I was like really excited about it and what it could do and how it made me feel. And so I was like, wow, I really want to be able to do this for other people the way I'm experiencing it. And so I took an accredited certification with the EFT tapping, got certified, and now I offer it as a service. And many times, people just generally, a lot of times one session is so powerful and it makes so many connections for you that you don't necessarily need another session after that. But, you know, in my sessions and also with the session that I got from Deb was not only is someone taking you through the session, but you're also teaching someone how to use it on their own.
Yeah.
And so it's like a tool that you can use on your own also. And so like there's 9 major tapping points that we use. And the tapping points are sort of energy meridian channel points that, you know, acupressure or acupuncture might be connected. And the points are generally, you start on the karate chop area right here generally, and then you would go up like the corner of the eyebrow, then the outside of the eye, the cheekbone, under the nose, under the bottom lip, and then the clavicles, you're kind of tapping on here. Sometimes I like doing this, but also I've seen where I like just kind of over the heart, just with an open hand is nice too. And then you go to the side, and then we go up top, and you don't rub your belly, but you know, some people might think that. So you just kind of go through that rotation of points. And so as we're taking someone through this, they're doing it so many times that they remember the sequence and they remember the order. But a lot of times when I'm taking someone through a session, it's not so much about tapping on the points in the right order for the whole session. It's more about getting the energy moving. And so the tapping is moving energy. And so the psychology part of it is the affirmation statements that you pair with the tapping. So like a standard EFT tapping statement might start out with something like, even though I'm anxious about flying to New York, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then I might follow it up with, even though flying makes me anxious, I love myself. And I don't worry about that, you know? So it's very casual, but it's forgiving. And then we'd move from the karate chop point to the next point right up here. And then I usually start, there's different ways and techniques to do it. But I would maybe go next with, so we started with, I'm anxious about flying. Then I might say, I'm anxious about flying because, so I would say that statement to the person, and then they would repeat it. So they would say, I'm really anxious about flying because, and then I'd say, you fill in the blank. So if I said, you're really anxious about flying, you would say, I'm really anxious about flying because I'm worried about crashing. Right? And so that's what might come out. And then we go deeper. And so I might say on the next point, like, I worry about crashing and I worry that I'll die, right? And that would be a fear of somebody's. And, you know, the next thing might be related to, like, if you're, let's say, a parent or you have children and you're going through this session, you know, you might have said, I worry about crashing, I worry about dying, and then the next thing might be, I worry that my kids will be alone. And if my kids are alone, I worry about them being sad. And if they're sad, that would make me sad. And then you just kind of dig a little bit deeper to dig into the roots beyond where your conscious mind was, but then it kind of helps bring it forward from the subconscious, what's really there. And then it brings it forward so we can actually put it on the table. It's like, oh, this is why, like, this fear of flying feels so intense, because all these things are wrapped up into it.
Yeah, okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so you definitely need the affirmations and the tapping note together for this to be the best, most beneficial.
Yeah,
Okay.
the EFT tapping uses both.
Okay.
Now, you can go through the sequence of tapping with the affirmation statements. So, for example, like I might incorporate like a hybrid of tapping in a Reiki session. So I may not be a traditional Reiki practitioner, but if I feel like someone is struggling to like move an emotion, I might set the expectation, hey, I'm going to try this with you, and I may take them through these like statements, and they may not necessarily know that I'm doing the tapping with them, but just saying it out loud, getting these vocal acknowledgments and of what's in their conscious mind, and then just saying it really quickly brings it out of the conscious, and then from the subconscious to the conscious mind. You know, just moving energy and releasing, vocalizing is a way of releasing.
Yeah.
And so that's a big way that people release things, is just talking about it. And so, but the other thing is, like, you know, it's all about, like I said, the tapping part is about moving energy. And so Reiki is about moving energy. And so if we're moving energy in both situations, I can apply the psychology part of it, the part of the tapping, with working that in there, and that's why it works with the Reiki as well.
Yeah.
But you know, as I take someone through like a tapping session, the EFT tapping session, they'll learn how to do this sequence, but they can learn that they can do this on their own. So like I can give you an example, like I've done this on my own driving in a car. And so like I have like a fear, or I get anxiety about like driving places that I'm not familiar with, you know? And like, I don't, you know, before we had GPS, when we had the maps and everything, like I would really like, you know, print out the MapQuest and have my map out and highlighting and everything like that. So like GPS and Google Maps makes things a whole lot easier now. But like there's been situations where even I wasn't even anxious about driving somewhere, but I might get like a spike of anxiety, or even I've experienced myself anxiety attacks. And anybody that's experienced those are horrible. And you know, they sometimes come out of nowhere, and like your heart rate rises, you start, you know, heavy breathing. And so like I've had situations where I was driving, and alls I would do is I would think about the anxiety, and like, so I would have one hand on the wheel, and I might put my hand over my heart like I talked about earlier, and I might just like tap. And then just tapping in general also helps like regulate your nervous system. And so just the tapping helps ground you and, you know, take your state of your nervous system from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. And I've had situations where I'd be tapping while I'm driving, and even like I feel myself talking about it right now as I was feeling like, or remembering the emotion of the anxiety driving, and now as I'm tapping, like my anxiety about remembering it is coming down also, you know, as I'm doing it. And like I would get to my destination and I would be like totally calm. If that makes sense.
Well, yes, and it's nice that it's easy enough. I don't want to say simple, because you have to remember the different things.
And I even teach people too, because like a lot of people are self-conscious about doing it. So like I teach people that I work with, like maybe they're at work, and maybe they're in a meeting, but they're feeling anxious about something at home or whatever. Like just tapping in general, even if it isn't on the tapping points that we talked about earlier, just like if someone's just tapping their fingers together, or they have their hands like this, you know, or just even tapping on their legs, and they can be thinking about what they're anxious about or what they're thinking about. And just the simple thing about tapping, it just kind of brings your energy down, and just kind of switches your nervous system and just makes you
And
a
it's
lot
a good
calmer.
distraction though too, on top of changing the nervous system,
Absolutely, yeah.
So how long would someone expect a session to be?
So I usually do a session for 90 minutes.
Okay.
So generally when I take someone through tapping, we're tapping probably somewhere between 45 and 60 minutes.
Okay.
And then I leave the last half hour or so to kind of process what came up, because it's a lot. It's like an experience where you go through a lot of mental work, and you can feel out of it like emotional, you can feel a little raw, because you've released stuff that was kind of stuffed down inside you, and now you've opened the floodgates, but you've gotten to the root of some things, and now it's kind of like as the waters are settling after the emotions have come out, you're just there kind of like floating in what happened. And so we talk about it, we process it, and I try to ground people before they leave me, and we revisit and talk about like how to do the tapping on their own. And I usually generally recommend for people to journal. And then also I'm a big advocate for therapy, talk therapy, because I've been in talk therapy for years. And anybody that's in talk therapy, I will also tell them, like, take this session that we just did with the EFT tapping and take this into your therapy session and continue to process.
Oh, the results of like the discussion part, you mean?
Okay. Like because the things that were released, whether we release things about anger or rage or fear or sadness, whatever it was, like if someone's working on something in therapy, but they were maybe hitting a wall with something, and maybe they weren't ready to talk about it in therapy either. But like if you're sitting in therapy with your therapist, right, you have time to think about what you have to say to them, right? So you have a choice, you can make a decision what I want to talk about. When you're going through the tapping session, it goes so quickly, you don't have time to decide what you want to say, so it's authentic what comes out. So now what comes out from the EFT tapping session, we can say, okay, we did all that hard work. Now let's make use out of it, and let's take this and take it into your therapist now, because you weren't ready before, but now you did all this work. Now we broke the ice. Now take it and go process it in therapy also.
Now, is this only good for the present life, or can it transcend lifetimes when we deal with the tapping of like a particular situation?
Well, so no, it can like transcend this life, because like if you're aware, like we can sometimes carry generational trauma or from past lives, and they may manifest into real physical, emotional, spiritual symptoms that we have, right? And so the real stuff that we're dealing with now, even though it might be fueled by that stuff, right? Even if it's generational or past life, we can look at it and open the door and connect the dots now with the EFT tapping and take the energy away from the intensity that it's causing with us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I was wondering about that, because like when I've talked about EFT with other people, though, they've only talked about this life, but as we're talking, it's definitely been a little bit more involved
like
than just
I'm
the
very
simple
open-minded. I'm out of the box, and so like even just with Reiki in general, like there's so much you can do with Reiki, and you're only really limited to your own limiting beliefs.
And that falls away after a while doing spiritual work.
Yeah, definitely.
So have you come across that yet, though, with the lifetimes, though, with this, though, or has it mostly stuck to this life, though, with your clients?
It's come up in a few situations where, I think I remember talking to someone and working with someone that maybe had a fear of water. And they had this fear of water now in their current life, but there wasn't anything that would have caused it in this lifetime. And they have done some of their own work, and they think they may have done a past life regression and determined that they may have drowned in a previous lifetime. But even though that was the past life, and there wasn't anything in their current life where they had a situation with water that created fear, that what they didn't have that, they were still feeling the intensity of when they got close to water, this would bubble up.
Yeah.
And so with what they're feeling now, we can still take the energy away from it to remove the intensity and bring down the fear and regulate.
Yeah, so definitely take the power away too.
And then also with taking the power away from the emotions, it empowers you. And what we also do is we reframe the negative stories, because a lot of things that we deal with EFT tapping also is limiting beliefs that we have of ourselves.
Okay.
And so those limiting beliefs could be like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to be able to make this happen kind of thing. These are the stories that people are telling themselves. But when we tap into maybe why those stories are there and we get to the root of them, and then we discover those, and then we take the power away from them and release the hold they have over us, now we can rewrite the story. And now we can say, oh, I am good enough because, and then we talk about why.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, to flip it like that though.
Yep.
Yeah. So it just
and that's what makes it almost like a more permanent, or a more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like we're releasing something and then we're filling it with something better.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm looking to say.
Yeah. Yeah, because just reframing it, I've seen, like in general, helps a lot with people. Just trying to work through their stuff, in short. So it's just, so it sounds like you've been doing this a while though with a few clients. I know it's only been a few years since you were the client. So you see yourself doing this for a while with EFT?
Oh, this is probably one of my best tools.
Okay. Yeah, so that answers my question.
Yeah, I love doing it. And it's just works so effectively. I love when people are open to trying it.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is another tool that we can use to empower ourselves.
Yeah. But there's a lot to process. Like I had said that day when I had my session, like I was processing on the drive home a lot, and a lot was coming up that didn't even come up in the session. So the same thing is happening with when I take someone through that. We're dealing with what came up during the session. We process it, and that's why I recommend like journaling.
Yeah, we're just gonna
is a big thing. Someone might not necessarily journal, but I recommend, hey, write it down even for yourself, even just the next 24 hours. Or you could take your phone, and your phone might have a voice recorder on it. Just talk into it.
Just so you can refer back to it.
Just so you can go back, yeah.
Yeah, it's like peeling peeling the onion.
Yeah.
Down to the core of it, or what the situation might be, where it's coming from.
Right, exactly.
Have you had any resistance with people when they're trying this?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
It's the same thing as like, I talked about talk therapy earlier. Like a lot of people get stuck in talk therapy with making progress because they're not ready.
Okay.
And so I recorded an episode on my YouTube recently about like, are you ready to heal? And you have to be ready to go places that are uncomfortable.
The shadow self, which is a different subject, but yes.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so you definitely tap into that with the EFT tapping.
Okay.
And you have to be willing to be vulnerable. And if someone's not ready to be vulnerable, then they may not be ready for a session. And so it may just require some discussion about why.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be among the limiting beliefs too.
Absolutely,
itself,
right,
yeah.
exactly, right.
Very interesting. So how often do you recommend people like do the EFT? Can it be done like every day or once a week?
You mean like if they're doing it on their own?
Yeah.
I would say like, they can do it as stuff comes up, but for maintenance purposes, if let's say someone deals with just, let's say social anxiety, like, being out in public and going grocery shopping or driving or going to the mall or whatever, like if they know this is something they deal with on a regular basis, then the more frequently you do the tapping, it's going to be more effective for you to kind of regulate yourself and maintain your nervous system a little easier. But it's not perfect, and reality gets the best of us sometimes, life happens, and we have to sometimes respond in a reaction way where, you know, it kind of gets away from us, but then we kind of go back and say, okay, what tools do I have to deal with this? And like, oh, I forgot about the tapping. So Leo told me I could just like place my hand over my heart when I'm feeling anxious, and I can just tap. And I can just say I'm really anxious about